The echoes of Harper Farm. I remember the first time I laid eyes on the old farmhouse. It was supposed to be our sanctuary, a refuge from the relentless clamor of the city. The peeling paint and boarded-up windows seemed like mere details in what was otherwise a perfect escape. A picturesque house amidst rolling hills, promising peace and tranquility. The first few days felt like a dream. The kids, Lily and Sam, were thrilled by the boundless space, their laughter like music in the woods surrounding our new home. Mary, ever the artist, set up her easel in the garden and began painting the wildflowers. I, a writer yearning for solitude, found my words flowing effortlessly in the quiet of my new study. But the serenity was short-lived. It started with subtle disturbances, footsteps creaking on the stairs at night, despite the fact that we were alone. Doors slammed shut on their own, their forceful bangs echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. Whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, too faint to be clear, but heavy, with a palpable malice. The first time Lily woke up screaming, she spoke of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. Her eyes were wide with terror, as she described eyes that burned with a cold, malevolent light. Sam, usually the more grounded of the two, began to sense an unsettling presence. He would turn sharply, eyes darting around, convinced he was being watched. I tried to dismiss these events. Old houses settled, creaking and groaning as they adjusted to their surroundings. The children's nightmares, I reasoned, were merely a side effect of their overactive imaginations, spurred by the strangeness of our new home. Mary, however, couldn't shake the dread that clung to her. She began to dig into the history of the farmhouse, her research revealing a chilling past. The house had once belonged to a family whose lives ended in a gruesome murder-suicide. The details were hazy, buried under layers of rumor and secrecy, but the blood and sorrow that lingered in the land were undeniable. Mary pleaded with me to leave. She was convinced the house was cursed, its very foundation tainted by the suffering of its previous inhabitants. But my skepticism hardened into stubbornness. We had committed to this house, and I refused to let old wives' tales dictate our lives. As days turned into weeks, the disturbances grew more intense. Objects moved on their own, my books would be scattered across the floor, and my typewriter would start typing of its own accord. Lily's nightmares became more vivid and terrifying, while Sam's unease grew into outright paranoia. One night, as I sat in the dimly lit study, I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whispering, as if someone was right behind me, their breath cold against my neck. I turned, but there was nothing. I tried to rationalize it as fatigue playing tricks on my mind, but deep down I knew something was terribly wrong. Mary's distress reached its peak when she found a series of old photographs in the attic. They showed the previous occupants, their faces twisted in expressions of despair and anguish. The final photograph was the most disturbing, a family portrait, with the parents' eyes scratched out. The final straw came one night when Lily screamed, her voice raw with fear. I rushed to her room, finding her huddled in the corner, eyes wide with terror. The shadowy figure she had spoken of seemed to manifest before me, its form shifting and flickering in the dim light. I tried to reach out, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Desperation clawed at me as I realized the full extent of the horror we were living in. The farmhouse was not merely a house. It was a vessel of suffering, an entity feeding off our fear and despair. The more we tried to ignore it, the more it seemed to feed on our anguish. We packed our belongings and left the farmhouse behind, the echoes of its dark past trailing us as we drove away. The peace we had sought was found elsewhere, Far from the haunted halls of Harper Farm, the house remains, a relic of sorrow, waiting for its next unsuspecting occupants to discover its secrets. To this day, I shudder when I think of that place. The farmhouse, with its peeling paint and boarded-up windows, stands as a grim reminder that some places are better left untouched, their dark histories best left buried in the past. The crickets outside played their nightly symphony, a constant hum in the pitch black of a moonless night. I lay in bed, restless, when an eerie scraping sound from the barn jolted me awake. My heart raced, the rhythmic thudding growing louder, mingling with the oppressive silence of the farmhouse. I threw off my covers and pulled on my boots, every movement heavy with dread. Grabbing my old flashlight, I stepped out into the thick, humid night. The scent of freshly turned soil mingled with the palpable tension in the air. As I approached the barn, the unsettling noise intensified. It was no longer just a clamor, but a chilling scrape, like claws raking over wood. My hand trembled as I reached for the cold, damp metal of the barn door. The rusty hinges groaned as I pushed it open, the sudden beam of my flashlight cutting through the dust-filled darkness. The familiar stench of animal waste was overwhelmed by something acrid and rancid, making my stomach lurch. I called out to my livestock, my voice swallowed by the vast emptiness. Silence answered me, an unsettling void that seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. Then, a blood-curdling shriek shattered the quiet, coming from the far end of the barn. My flashlight swung wildly in the direction of the sound, illuminating a nightmarish sight. There, in the dim light, stood a creature beyond comprehension. It was tall and gaunt, its skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Its eyes glowed a malevolent red, and its teeth, long and jagged, glistened in the beam like shards of glass. The grotesque snarl on its face sent a jolt of pure terror through me. My breath caught, my heart thudding painfully against my ribs. I stumbled back, my foot catching on a loose floorboard. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, plunging the barn into impenetrable darkness. I scrambled to my feet, my mind a frenzy of panic. The creature's horrid presence loomed in the blackness, its guttural growls vibrating through the wooden walls. I ran, my legs moving on sheer adrenaline. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, a relentless drumbeat of fear. I never returned to that barn. The memory of that nightmarish creature haunted my dreams, its red eyes and jagged teeth forever etched in my mind. The barn remains abandoned, a silent witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows of the unknown. The sun blazed down mercilessly on my back as I labored under its unrelenting heat, tilling the endless rows of corn. Each day, the scent of sweat and earth mingled in the oppressive air, a constant reminder of the land's grip on my life. For generations, my family had worked this plot of soil, and until recently, I had accepted it as my fate. But lately, a creeping sense of unease had settled over me, like a shadow I couldn't shake off. It began with murmurs among the farm hands, hushed whispers exchanged when they thought I wasn't listening. They spoke of strange happenings in the northern field, an area my grandfather had always forbidden us from entering. I had dismissed their stories as nothing more than superstitions, the idle chatter of men with too much time on their hands. But then, I started experiencing it myself. It started with a cold spot in the middle of the field, a sudden drop in temperature that sent shivers down my spine. I felt eyes on me, watching from the edge of the woods that bordered our property. I couldn't shake the feeling, despite my attempts to rationalize it. Something was wrong, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. One sweltering afternoon, as I worked on the irrigation system, I stumbled upon something peculiar. Hidden among the tall stalks of corn, I discovered a depression in the ground. My curiosity got the better of me. I pushed aside the leaves, revealing a rusted metal hatch nearly swallowed by the earth. A shiver ran through me as I realized I had never seen this before, despite knowing every inch of this land like the back of my hand. Hesitantly, I reached for the handle. It was cold and damp against my palm. As I twisted it, the hatch creaked open with a groan, revealing a set of rickety wooden stairs descending into darkness. A wave of dizziness washed over me, a strange pull urging me to explore the unknown depths. I knew I should turn back, report this to my father, but something, perhaps a morbid curiosity or a subconscious desire to uncover the secrets of my family's past, compelled me to continue. Each step I took down the stairs echoed in the heavy silence. The air grew thicker, laden with the scent of damp earth, mixed with something metallic and cloying that made my stomach churn. My eyes gradually adjusted to the gloom, and I found myself in a narrow earthen tunnel propped up with rotting timbers. Lanterns, spaced at intervals along the walls, flickered feebly, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. The tunnel seemed endless, leading me deeper into the earth's bowels. I walked for what felt like hours, the silence only broken by my own breathing and the incessant drip of water seeping through the cracks in the ceiling. Just as I was about to turn back, convinced I had made a grave mistake, the tunnel opened into a large, cavernous chamber. The sight before me stopped me dead in my tracks. In the center of the chamber, bathed in the eerie glow of the lanterns, lay a stone altar stained a dark, rusty brown. Around its base, human bones were scattered, bleached white by time, and stripped clean. The sight filled me with a wave of nausea, my mind struggling to comprehend the scene before me. This was not a place of respect or rest for the dead. It was something far more sinister, something profane. I took a cautious step closer, my foot brushing against something hard and round. I glanced down, my heart racing. There, half buried in the dirt, was a small, ornately carved box. My hands trembled as I reached for it, the box cold and heavy in my grasp. I slowly lifted the lid, revealing a collection of strange, ancient artifacts. Each item seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a malevolent presence that made the air grow colder. As I examined the items, a chilling realization struck me. These were not merely relics. They were tools for rituals, instruments of something dark and ancient that my ancestors had long forsaken. A sense of dread washed over me as I understood that whatever had been happening in the northern field was tied to these objects, to the dark history of my family. I had to leave. My breath came in ragged gasps as I stumbled back up the stairs, my mind racing with the implications of what I had discovered. The sense of being watched grew stronger, and I felt a chilling presence follow me as I emerged from the hatch and collapsed onto the ground. As I lay there, gasping for breath, the realization dawned on me. I had unearthed something that should have remained buried, and now I feared the consequences of my actions. The northern field was no longer just a place of superstition. It was a site of something far more ominous, something that had been waiting for me to uncover.